Alright, so it's already almost Chinese New Year. I just wish you guys Happy New Year recently only, and it's really like Chinese New Year. And I think before I go on a short break, just like everyone else, why not cover one of possibly the biggest launch of first half 2026? Now, is it the biggest? I'm not too sure. But will it be the most hype of first half 2026? Quite possibly. And it's mandatory that I cover this because this location is literally my playground, East Coast Vela Bay. Here we go.
Disclaimer, whatever I share does not constitute financial advice. It is solely based on my opinion on what is right or wrong. So please do your own due diligence. If you're liking the content so far, please hit the like and subscribe button, as your simple gesture will help a lot with the YouTube algorithm. If you are interested to find out more about property related matters, please find all the social media handles I am on, or you can just directly reach out to me on WhatsApp. Separately, I have also set up a Telegram group at the start of the year so that we can have a discussion that we as agents are not allowed to do so online, which is to talk shit. So if you are interested to get into a community that talks about everything under the sun about property, please scan the QR code, or for the boomers out there, I have pasted the link in my description. We're going to close the group invitation in probably a month or 2 times, so head over and I will see you there. Now back to the video.
So this is the legendary OCR plot that everyone has been using to pitch CCR properties for the past 1 year. I bet each time you walk to the Real Valley Show Flats or even One Marina Gardens OMG, someone will tell you the price is cheap because OCR land already hit 1388 per square foot per plot ratio and selling price 3000 per square foot. This is it lor. This is the one. This is the CCR sell at OCR price. This is the OCR property. But guys, come on. Yes, this is in the OCR, but this setup is nothing like a OCR property. I mean, this is East Coast leh. Although it's at the end of East Coast, we are talking about District 16, Bayshore, right beside the Bayshore MRT and a whole new township. This is on paper OCR, but it's really similar to like Chuan Park where it feels more RCR than OCR. And not only that, I mean, it's East Coast lah. There's 2 spots in Singapore that I repeatedly mentioned that everyone wants to move to, and that is East Coast and River Valley. Now, it's only a question of whether they can afford or cannot afford lah. So don't get sucked into the argument or narrative that
whatever you buy in the CCR is cheap because OCR Bayshore already selling at that price.
Exercise some common sense, okay? If you cannot trick into like buying OMG just because of this, then you're asking for it long, because this one has so much more demand. The other one, we will see. So in today's episode of Picking the Right Launch, I will share with you why this launch will likely be the most hyped and possibly the best launch for first half 2026. Now, hype doesn't mean it's good or bad. It doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you how eager people are in wanting to understand more about this property, because this is going to be the talk of the town. The uncle, auntie go coffee shop at C Club will confirm gossip. The agents will station you see at various spots in the markets around like Marine Terrace, NTUC, and popular spots like Jalan Tuakong Coffee Shop to hype it. By far and large, I believe this will be the most consumable property even with its price tag. But my job here is simple. I try to help you guys quantify and cut through the noises to understand if this one really has potential, or as what I mentioned, all about hype. And the fairest way to do this is to use our QPE framework to analyze this. But at this point of recording, I only got the site plan, a no floor plan, which means my video will be shorter lah. But actually that's more than enough for me to prep things up leading to the launch itself in March and April. On to the name, Vela Bay. I mean, what the hell is a Vela Bay? Why not Bayshore Residences or Residences at Bayshore or Park Bayshore, Grand Bayshore, or even like Bayshore View? That I don't know, but maybe it will stick in your head in time to come. But for me, I'm like, come on, like guys, you can do better. Anywho, not important at all. Some context developers Singhahi who built you the notable Park Clementes, Grand Diamond, and unfortunately the One Collective at Sophia. But anyway, they really did pay like 1,388 per square foot per plot ratio for the development. I lazy to check, but I believe this should be the record PSF PPR for OCL plot, which, as I mentioned, is like more like our OCL development. Break-even price stands at 2,528 per square foot. Then you add another 8% for harmonized, it lands us at like 2,730 per square foot, which is quite fierce. Then you add a margin of like between 10 to 20%, you get a 3,000 to 3,275 PSF. Okay, doesn't sound too cheap, right? But let's get into the specifics in a bit. I'll put a number of like between 2,850 to 3,000 per square foot as a gauge because I'm really not too sure if developers will dare to start from 3,000 or not. And before I do that, I just want to emphasize how sought after this location is. Now, this used to be a stretch of jungle stretching all the way to Bedok Camp. Then the Thomson Eastern Line MRT came along. Announcement of the Bayshore Township happened many years after, and rightfully so, because the government will have no interest to spend billions of dollars to build you an infrastructure that serves only the likes of like Costa del Sol, Bayshore Park, the Bayshore, and all the stretch of landed properties along Upper East Coast Road. So it will be a combination of residential properties, both private and HDB, more HDBs in fact, and Vela Bay is going to be the first private there up for offering and probably the first launch there in about 9 years after seaside residences like District 16, but 22 years in the Bayshore area. And of course, seaside residences prices will be taken into consideration when we start comparing later. And first circle of our QPE framework, let's look at the quality. Point 1, land size, facilities and facade. Now, 2 blocks of 515 units sitting on close to 113,000 square feet a piece of land, mostly orientating towards the south, which faces the sea if you hit a certain level. Now, before I continue, I want to get the elephant out of the room first. Vela Bay is under the Bayshore car light zone, which means that it has a 50% provision for car park lots. Now, at this point of recording, I cannot confirm 100% whether that is going to be the same or not, but it should be similar to that of Bloomsbury. Now, if you do this in the business hub or catchment that is like beside the MRT, I think still okay, but you do it in East Coast where you want to attract predominantly families, that I cannot comment because it's relatively untested. Okay, back to the designs. Overall, it's pretty good. I think from an architectural point of view, the designers have managed to do everything that one can ask for. No afternoon sun for most, checked. Mostly south facing, checked. With some less premium facing, likely overlooking the northern side, which is likely blocked by future developments. Block sea views, checked. And the block to block, also pretty good distance from one another, which is good. Now, it's almost full condo facilities. Tennis court in a land size that's around 100,000 square feet land space, plus minus, it's a plus point. No lap pool, unfortunately, but what you need in a condo, you got it. So for the first point, a land size, facilities and facade, given the land size is not too big, I think it's pretty good for a mid-sized plot. The only one negative is the car park. And I know it's not the developer's fault, but 50% car park in a family-oriented neighborhood, even though the MRT is just beside, will have serious objections in time to come, whether you like it or you don't. Okay? Point number 2, layout and pricing. And because I do not have any layouts, I can probably give you like an estimate on what the sizes could be to stress test on what prices might float in coming weeks. Firstly, harmonized layouts these days are all pretty good. Now, barring some odd, weird ones, they generally look about the same. And given Singhai's track record, they tend to build you pretty good stuff with the exception of the Sophia Road one. Okay, so what can we expect? 2 bed, 2 bath, like maybe 657 square feet, 3 compacts, like 850 square feet, some may start from 797, 3 bedroom, premium 990 square feet, 4 bedroom like 1,002, then 5 bedrooms like 1,464. And I feel that they won't dare to build too big because the per square foot here is going to be pretty high. So let's begin the stress test, okay? Price of 2,850 to 3,000 per square foot, and let's set the parameters right. I will take 2 condos as a reference. Now, one is seaside residences, given it's the newest there. The other is Costa del Sol, which is the most sought after one in the Bayshore area. Now, one is around 5 years old, the other one is around 20 2 years old. Bayshore Park and the Bayshore is too old to compare, and it's so pointless to take cue from the Upper East Coast ones lah. Okay, so 2 bed, 2 bath, 657 square feet. Just an example, okay? And that's just assumption of the sizes lah. If it turns out differently, then you just adjust accordingly. But I think the sizes will be more or less about this range. 2,850 to 3,000 per square foot, $1.87 million to let's say it's no more than $2 million lah. Now, Seaside transacts their 2 bed, 2 bath at a range of like between 1.85 to about $2 million. 2005, 2006 per square foot pre-harmonized. Now, if you account for harmonization, they are easily hitting like 2.8 to 2.9 per square foot lah. So Costa del Sol, on the other hand, goes for around $1.7 million. So when people say that Vela Bay is too expensive, they are just looking at per square foot only. The quantum likely would be almost similar. So far, so good. Now, next up, 3 compact, 850 square feet, and 3 premium, 990 square feet, $2.42 million to 2.55 for the smaller 3 compact, and like 2.82 to like maybe under 3 for the 3 premium. Now, firstly, the neighborhood doesn't have any 3 compact. They are all mostly like 3 premium. So if the price is right and you're buying the smaller 3 bedroom, you kind of like compete within your own space. Okay, the 3 premium, however, Seaside residences are doing theirs at like between $2.7 million all the way to $3.3 million. Costa del Sol, on the other hand, already hitting $2.5 million there about for the higher floor units. Now, this depending on the sizes will of course determine if it's like too much or not. But if it's a sea facing at under $3 million, it is not super cheap. But I won't be surprised if people will still go for it because you can't get any 3 bedroom sea facing at under $3 million these days in the East Coast. Okay, next up, 4 bedroom, 1,200 square feet, $3.42 million to $3.6 million. Of course, this is really if it's 1,200 square feet. Will likely be the best seller in my opinion. Now, why? Because Seaside 4 bedrooms are already hitting 4.4, although their space is much larger at like 1,600 to 1,700 square feet. Costa del Sol is around $3 to $3.5 million depending on size, and because the families will typically consume the larger ones, this will be no different. And it's really trading at a price similar to that of Costa del Sol and way cheaper than Seaside residences. So essentially, you are like expensive and cheap at the same time. Now, what do I mean by that? Expensive in per square foot, cheap in quantum. Okay, so confirm, sell well, unless the developers like really whack 4 million plus lah. That one different story, bro. And finally, a 5 bedroom, if there's even one, is 1,464 square feet, like $4.18 million all the way to like $4.4 million. And because 5 bedrooms is the in thing only in the past 6 to 7 years, the older condos don't usually have such a unit type. So naturally for this unit type, you're just on your own. Reserved probably for the best facing, I expect the average price for this to be more expensive than all the unit types. Now, pretty much in line with what developers are doing these days anyway, loading premium on size. But who really cares? Because this one, the people will really just buy. So no need to talk so much. So for the point 2 of layouts and price, without getting a sight of the layouts and purely just giving it a good estimation, I believe the prices are what I mentioned, expensive and cheap. Okay, I repeat again, expensive in per square foot, cheap in quantum for some. Now, Singhai reputation has been quite okay, so I don't think there should be much issues with the layout. Now, do I think the price might potentially start lower than 2,850 per square foot? Yes, I do. I think the delta between the lowest all the way to the highest could be like 2,600 or 2,700 per square foot, all the way to like as high as 3,003, 3,004 PSF. But for argument's sake, we just put the range of like 2,850 to 3,000 per square foot. That's what I just did. So if that's the case, then so far it looks pretty good. Now on to point number 3, location, MRT and amenities. Needless to say, this is the biggest selling point of Vela Bay. Now, being beside MRT is one thing, but being beside Bayshore MRT is another. So what's the big deal about Bayshore? It's in the East Coast. And truth be told, although you guys know I focus mainly in the Tanjung Rhu and the part of East Coast that is closer to town, if I get the chance, I'd rather stay at the end of East Coast, because life there is more chill, less crowd. I also like this part of the East Coast Park more. The Bedok Jetty, the hawker center, the seafood center, it's just much quieter and I absolutely love it. Being the first mover of the Bayshore new township, this whole area is going to be buzzing the next 10 years. Yes, there's more HDBs than private coming up in this neighborhood, but that's almost going to mean that the amenities are going to be good because HDB clusters will always bring you all the stuff like you need. Community center, coffee shops, your sheng xiong should be more or less guaranteed. And not to forget, just down the road, one stop away is going to be your integrated development that is even bigger than the likes of Lentor Modern. And if I can recall correctly, the retail GFA is slightly smaller than that of Woodlake Mall, I think. Then some more beside Vela is going to be a small park. There should also be an underpass that leads you to East Coast Park itself. So this is lifestyle lah, bro. And that's the lifestyle people will pay money for. That's why when people start to upsell CCR properties by telling you that Bayshore OCL selling at similar price tag, hello, do you know how convenient this is or not? Do you know how sought after this is? You step on this to sell one Marina Gardens, you see whose demand will be stronger in time to come on, even though the pricing isn't that far apart. We'll see. So the strength of Vela Bay lies in the location, MRT and amenities, but if you don't understand the East Coast well, then this to you will be a little bit ulu. But those who understand East Coast, you know how good this will be. Okay, point number 4, views, and this is also another selling point. The sea facing, southern facing at a certain level will clear the trees to overlook the sea, and I can tell you one unique thing about this sea view if you don't know. Now, the East Coast Park from here is not in a straight line. It's slightly curving towards the eastern side. So for the premium facings at the front when you're orientating towards the southeastern side, I can tell you that you will get the morning sun. Yes, can be a little bit hot, but the image of the sun hitting the blue sea is something I still cannot forget. Those who live in Costa del Sol high floors along like Block 76, 78 and 80 will understand what I'm trying to say. So the view is to die for, but then again some pessimistic people will say, hey, what about the Long Island coming up? Wouldn't your views be blocked? Now that's a fair argument since no one knows how the Long Island will look like exactly, but I always tell my clients this one thing, okay? The planning will likely conclude only by 2030. Now, when you start the land reclamation process, it will typically take about like 15-20 years for the grounds to be fundamentally strong to start construction. So this will be our future generation problems, not ours. Okay. Anyway, back to it. Some of the less premium facings will be overlooking the future developments on the northern side and the Bayshore condo on your northwestern side. That's why in this case, I believe the sea-facing ones will still get snapped up fast. I mean, that's how it rolls. Whether it makes more sense financially or not, they typically don't care. Hence, all in all, for point number 1 of quality, I think the development looks good for its size judging from the site plan. Now, the developers have managed to maximize the views you can get from the 2 buildings. Layout should be fine. Generally speaking, prices looks high from a per square foot perspective, but the absolute price tag is pretty much the same with seaside residences, so I don't think it's incredibly overpriced either. The strength of the quality should lie on the location, amenities and view. And so far, we are off to a very, very good start. Now on to the final circle, exit strategy. Do I really need to touch on this? Because it's East Coast. But for the benefit of those of you who don't know the East Coast well enough, let me help you with this, okay? Once more, there's 2 spots that most locals would want to live in, and that's River Valley and East Coast. Why? Because these 2 spots has this vibe and setup that attracts like home buyers. Now in the case of East Coast, it's the lifestyle in the form of like East Coast Park, obviously. Of course, you also have the Sea Club eateries, the drive to City Central, and because the sports hub is located not too far away, it's really like a haven for family with kids or those fitness junkies. But anyway, so point number 1, supply demand. Given the last new launch in the Bayshore area is Costa del Sol, so needless to say, the only high-rise comparables in the vicinity of Bayshore is that of Bayshore Park and the Bayshore. Seaside is still considered Siglap to be fair. Demands are always going to be strong for this part of the east. Point number 2, transformation. Well, this is part of the new transformation and we are literally first movers. But to be very precise, this is just a new township. More like urban rejuvenation rather than a solid transformation. But really, East Coast don't need any major transformation. People still want to be there. Point number 3, schools. Now, Temasek Primary as the notable ones, not easy to go in. So plus points for sure. And point number 4, target audiences. You got the HDB upgraders coming from a new township itself, but because their MOP is like 10 years, I'm still not too sure how that's gonna pan out in the longer run, but you are easily gonna get like upgraders coming from like Bedok, Tampines, and the entire east side, because getting into this part of the East Coast will almost certainly be an upgrade. And not only that, all the amenities and connectivity lifestyle is just going to make it that much more attractive. So for the circle of exit strategy, it is also a clear winner. The demand will be off the roof. And I think the recent Seaside launch as an example, they moved an incredible amount of units on launch day itself. Okay, so this shouldn't be any different. Now, in conclusion, is Vela Bay going to be all hype, or is really a project that should be one for your consideration? Well, I think it's a combination of both hype and potential. Your pricing will ultimately determine your exit. If overpay too much, then this whole equation wouldn't work either. That's where I come into the picture, because at 31 levels or 30 odd stories, I cannot remember exactly how much or how high, there's bound to be premiums loaded on various levels and whatnot ever. Now, the location is fantastic. The product will likely look good. Layouts shouldn't fare too poorly either. Now, all we need to do now is to really get a sight of the floor plans for me to do a separate video on this, but up until this point, this is a sell out. And I can't exactly see any flaws in this, except, as I mentioned, the potential price that you are going to pay for and in the car park law, which the 50% provision really can be a problem if it's a problem for those, but that's something we have to take into account. Okay, and it's really not often that we get a property like this in the East Coast that comes with a great view of the sea, has an MRT at doorstep, and really is the start of a brand new township. Now, this opportunity is hard to come by. Even the upcoming integrated development looks good, but they shouldn't have the views of Vela Bay, which will always be one of its selling points. The demand will be incredibly strong because it's the East Coast and the Bayshore area is hungry for a new development for the longest time, 22 years to be exact. Okay, for investors out there, if your investment horizon is like between 5 to 7 years, this is going to be an amazing choice to make, because by then most HDBs would already be up. The integrated development should have already been completed. 60-70% of the new township should already be up and running, and that's when the value will be there for everyone to appreciate. Now, for those planning to get it for own use, you are sure that this is for you, because the East Coast lovers wouldn't give a shit about what others people say, because to them East will always still be the best, and I can totally agree because it's East for me anytime. Now, as I mentioned, all we're going to do is to really get the floor plans coming in with a guide price to gauge if it's really indeed something up there as our first half 2026 launch or not. However, be it for own use or investment, Vela Bay is likely going to be something that you should pay attention to. Now, don't be taken back by the high per square foot. The very same slogan that people are using, buy CCL when OCR already going to hit like close to $3 per square foot. This is both expensive and cheap, but once more, put on your thinking cap, because this is not your ordinary OCR project. This could literally be the East Coast plan.